Good morning, team and family. Welcome to science class. You're going to put your name at the top. Go ahead and put your house. There's only a select few that can put the Incredible Bridges house. The rest of you just put your poo houses down. Then you're going to answer questions 1 through 4, the question in the box, and the question below. You have 3 minutes total to complete all of page 1. Go ahead and put a thumbs up so I know that you're working silent and solo. Go ahead and pause the video right here. Thank you. Alrighty, let's take a look at our responses here. So we know that the image to the right is 100% the water cycle. Whenever we see those 4, or it could be 5 steps listed here: condensation, precipitation, runoff, evaporation, we most definitely always need to label it as the water cycle. So number 1 says, what process is shown in the image to the right? You should have selected the water cycle. What is happening during the process of transpiration? If we look at the image, we see that there are arrows coming up from the plant. These arrows mean that whatever liquid water is stored inside the plant is being converted to a gas or water vapor. And so because of that, the process of transpiration occurs when water evaporates from the leaves of plants. And we're going to add and turns to water vapor in the atmosphere. Okay. What powers the process of transpiration? The sun or heat, solar energy. So the sun's heat is what causes that evaporation, which then creates transpiration from the leaves of plants. Based on the image to the right, would there be more rain or less rain in warmer temperatures? Explain your answer. Warmer temperatures would be a greater amount of evaporation, leading to a much higher rate of condensation and precipitation. Therefore, there would be more rain. Let's explain that very quickly. The warmer it is, the more liquid water is changing to a gas or water vapor, which means the more evaporation that occurs, the more water vapor there is in our atmosphere, the more clouds form, and therefore the more rain it is. So we have more evaporation leads to more clouds, which leads to more rain. Okay. Up here, which of the following processes is responsible for changing liquid water into water vapor? This means that we need heat, which means that evaporation is the correct answer here. Why is this cycle pictured above so important in our life on Earth? The water cycle is so important because all living things need water to survive, and the water cycle keeps a constant amount of available water for organisms on Earth. If you need to pause the video here to get any of the answers down, go ahead and do that at this time. Make sure your paper looks just like mine. As soon as you're done, go ahead and turn the page. Go. All right, next up we have our blast from the past. It says label the following as an ecosystem, community, population, or organism. Then at the bottom we have one question with 2 parts, A and B. There's an A here for you to answer question A, and then a B here for you to answer part B. You have 2 minutes, silent and solo. Neil, this means you were not talking. Go ahead and put your thumb in the air so that the teacher knows that you are working silent and solo. Begin. Let's take a look at our responses from blast from the past. Number 1 is squirrel. You should have said organism. Why? Because we only have one by itself, just like Demarin at the lunch table. Number 2, 15 deer in the same forest. We're talking about the same type of organism, so this is a population. Number 3, a river with fish, deer, sunlight, and trees. Notice that they have named biotic factors and abiotic factors. This is an ecosystem. Bear and deer living together in the same forest. We're talking about one habitat and only the living parts of that habitat. So this is a community. And then we have an alligator in a swamp with trees, rocks, and fish. Again, we have biotic factors, abiotic factors because of the mix, and it is a larger habitat. This is an ecosystem. Jump down to our question at the bottom. It says the diagram below shows water molecules moving through the cell membrane into a body cell. We know when we're talking about water molecules moving across a membrane that we automatically label this as osmosis. So if we take a look at what's happening, we're going to label our semi-permeable membrane, label the water molecules, and then we see that as the process continues, our molecules are filling into the cell. We start with 12 molecules outside of the cell, then 2 molecules cross the membrane, and then 6 molecules cross the membrane until there's an even number of molecules inside and outside of the cell. So it asks us, A, what is the name of this process? And B, explain what causes the molecules to move into the cell. This is what you should have said. A, osmosis is pictured above. B, the molecules are trying to reach a state of equilibrium. Please remember that equilibrium means balance or to be even, where the same amount or volume is present on both sides of the membrane. Once the molecules have reached equilibrium, the process will stop. So we see, again, we start with 12 on the outside. We end with 6 on the outside, 6 on the inside. Equilibrium has been reached in the last image. If you need to pause this video to get to get these answers down, like maybe you are Luis and you were just laughing the whole time during the video, I don't know, go ahead and pause it right now. If you are all done, go ahead and turn the page. Next up, we have our Mad Scientist Dash. You have 2 minutes to use the word bank words here to answer questions 1 through 12. Don't be like John Kerry and be like, I don't know who the answers are. The words are right here, so let's not be crazy. 2 minutes, if it comes up, your teacher knows you are working silent and solo. Go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, tomorrow you are going to have a pop quiz on all of these words. It should look very familiar because guess what? The words are in the same order as last week. Thank you so much for noticing my nails. Yes, I did get them done. Appreciate you. Number 1, all ecosystems is the biosphere. Number 2, community plus the abiotic factors is the ecosystem. 3, all populations in an ecosystem, so this means a mix of different living things, community. Number 4, all organisms of one species in an ecosystem is a population. Number 5, single animal or plant is an organism, just one. Matter cannot be created or destroyed, the law of conservation of mass. 7, energy cannot be created or destroyed, law of conservation of energy. 8, process by which plants transform energy from the sun into stored energy in the form of glucose, photosynthesis. Process by which plants and animals gain energy from glucose, cellular respiration. Living things are biotic, non-living things are abiotic. Element used by all living things to grow is nitrogen. And these last 2, you learned last year with Mr. Dubrat. What is a consumer? It's an organism that feeds on other organisms. What is a producer? A producer makes its own food using chemical reactions from water, sunlight, and CO2. If you need to pause the video to get these down, go ahead and do that at this time. If not, go ahead and turn the page. We are going to do a quick review to see how much you remember from last year. You have a list of 7 organisms, which means all of these pieces here are biotic factors. You need to name if they are a consumer, which means that they eat other living things, or a producer, which means they need sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide to make their own food inside of plant cells. Go ahead and take 2 minutes to do this right now. Go. All right, our first one is a tree. We know a tree is a producer. Second one, shark, consumer. Third, human, consumer. The shark and the human are going to eat other organisms in order to obtain energy. Lettuce, while it's growing in the dirt, is going to be a producer. A strawberry, also a plant, is going to be a producer. A dog and a bird, both consumers. These things need to be fed and need to obtain energy from an outside source. Our anchoring question today is, how did carbon get inside you? We need to figure that out. There is an element inside of your body right now, but last time I checked, you're not eating carbon every single day, like right in front of you, just carbon by itself. We're trying to figure out, how does carbon get into your blood, into your body, and also into every living thing that's around us. Let's take a look at our background knowledge right now. Please follow along with me as I read. The carbon cycle is the circulation, which means it goes around in a circle, make your paper look like mine, and transformation, which means change, of carbon back and forth between living things and the environment. Carbon is an element, something that cannot be broken down into a simpler substance. Other examples of elements are oxygen, nitrogen, calcium, iron, and hydrogen. Carbon compounds are present in living things like plants and animals, and in non-living things like rocks and soil. Carbon is often referred to as the building block of life because living things are based on carbon and carbon compounds. The amount of carbon on the Earth and in Earth's atmosphere is fixed, which means that there's a certain amount. But that fixed amount of carbon is dynamic, always changing into different carbon compounds, moving between living and non-living things. So when we say different carbon compounds, we mean that sometimes carbon is found as a solid, other times it's found as a gas, and other times in liquid form. Carbon is released to the atmosphere from what are called carbon sources and stored in plants, animals, rocks, and water in what are called carbon sinks. So anything that produces carbon is a carbon source. Anything that's going to soak up carbon is a carbon sink. This process occurs in a number of steps. In the first step, through photosynthesis, process by which plants capture the sun's energy and use it to grow, plants take carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and release oxygen. The carbon dioxide is converted into carbon compounds to make up the body of the plant, which are stored in both the above ground parts of the plant, shoots and leaves, and the below ground parts, the roots. And the next step, animals eat the plants, breathe in the oxygen, and exhale carbon dioxide. The carbon dioxide created by animals is then available for plants to use in photosynthesis. Carbon stored in plants that are not eaten by animals eventually decomposes after the plant dies and is either released into the atmosphere or stored in the soil. What you're going to do right now is go ahead and use this reading to answer questions 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then you are going to write out your own step-by-step for how the carbon cycle happens. Go ahead and take the next 4 minutes to do this on your own, silent and solo. Thumbs in the air so your teacher knows you are working. Seriously, don't wait for me to write the answers because there are none. Go. Okay, so I lied. Here are the answers. So it says, what is the carbon cycle? You should have found that answer here. The carbon cycle is the circulation and transformation of carbon back and forth between living things and the environment. Where is carbon found in the environment? You could have said carbon is found in plants, animals, rocks, and soil. The text says that the amount of carbon in the atmosphere is fixed. What does that mean? The fixed amount means that there is a certain amount. So it's not that we're creating new amounts of carbon. It's that we're releasing more that's been stored in the earth, or we're taking more from the atmosphere, but we're not creating new carbon. What the carbon that is found on our planet is the same carbon that's been here for millions of years. So we're either unearthing more as we burn more fossil fuels, or soaking more up as we plant more trees and grass and things of that sort. What is a carbon sink? It is not like what's in your kitchen, so if you said that, you will get slapped. What is a carbon sink? A carbon sink is a feature on Earth that absorbs carbon. So if we are writing out the carbon cycle in our own words, this is my step-by-step. Yours can be slightly different as long as you have the most important pieces. Step 1, plants take CO2 or carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere in photosynthesis. Step 2, carbon dioxide is converted, which means change, and stored in the plant. You can even add that it's stored in the leaves and the stem and below ground in the roots. Step 3, animals eat the plants and exhale carbon dioxide, putting it back into the atmosphere for those original plants to soak up again, those carbon sinks. And then lastly, when plants and animals die, carbon is returned to the soil, and the roots of plants also soak up carbon in that way as well. If you need to pause the video, go ahead and do that right now to get these responses down. If not, go ahead and turn the page to Evidence Dive 1. Let's take a look. It says, what is happening in the infographic above? You can just use this space here to answer that in a complete sentence. The following best explains the purpose of the infographic. You need to circle either A, B, or C. And 3, in a conversation with Ms. Scott, she said, I don't understand why we don't run out of carbon or why it doesn't get all used up. Can you help Ms. Scott understand why we don't run out of carbon on the planet based on what you see in the image? 3 minutes for Evidence Dive 1. Go. All right, guys, we're going to take a look at this diagram and explain exactly what is going on. So remember, CO2 is the gas form of carbon. And it is carbon dioxide, which means we have one element of carbon, or one atom of carbon rather, 2 atoms of oxygen. Okay, so what we see is that combustion, or this is the burning of fossil fuels like coal and oil, adds CO2 Photosynthesis takes it away. Plant and animal respiration, this just means that we are exhaling or breathing out. Add CO2, and then water like rivers, oceans, lakes also soak up CO2, the carbon sink. So again, this is just explaining the ways that we add and take away carbon in our atmosphere and in our environment. So what is happening in the infographic? What you should have said is that we see a model for how carbon dioxide is removed and added to the atmosphere. Super simple. Which of the following best explains the purpose of the infographic? Is to convey that materials are cycled between the biotic and abiotic factors of the environment. And 3, in a conversation with Ms. Scott, she said, "Please and squeeze, woo doo woo." This is what you should have said. We do not run out of carbon or carbon dioxide because we are constantly returning CO2 to the environment by burning fossil fuels and decaying organic matter. So when we say that, we're talking about dead plants, dead animals. They're just laying in the soil. Eventually, they get soaked into the soil, and carbon or carbon dioxide gets released into the soil and released back into the atmosphere. And removing it through the use of CO2 by producers during photosynthesis. This process of removing and adding CO2 is constant, so carbon is never entirely removed. What you want to do if you need to pause the video to get this on, go ahead and do that. If not, turn the page. So we are looking at the synthesis now, or our gist. What are the main ideas and key points that we are learning about the carbon cycle? So where is, it should say CO2 being released into the atmosphere. Explain how the biotic and abiotic factors of the environment work together to keep a continued flow of carbon on Earth. Go ahead and do both of those questions at this time. Go. All right, where is CO2 being released into the atmosphere? You should have said CO2 occurs or is being released due to the burning of fossil fuels here. Again, when we say fossil fuels, we're talking about coal, we're talking about oil, we're talking about gasoline, and respiration. Respiration simply means we are breathing out or exhaling. So every time you breathe out, like that right there, don't do that because some of y'all didn't brush your teeth this morning. Every time you breathe out, we're actually releasing CO2 out into the atmosphere, and plants need that and they soak it up. Let's take a look at the bottom. Explain how the biotic and abiotic factors of the environment work together to keep a continued flow of carbon on Earth. Biotic factors like plants absorb CO2 while animals release it for plants to use. Abiotic factors like water soak up CO2 in the atmosphere, and sunlight makes the process of photosynthesis possible as the plant stores the carbon and releases oxygen as a waste product. So again, if you need to pause the video here, get down these responses, go ahead and do that. Now, today was all about figuring out how we get carbon inside of our bodies and really understanding the carbon cycle. I hope after going through each of those evidence types, we figured out that not only are we releasing CO2 out into the atmosphere, but every time we eat plants or vegetables, which have stored carbon inside of their cells, that's how we're ingesting carbon into our body. Let's take a look at the exit ticket question for today. According to the image to the left, what human activity would increase the amount of CO2 in the habitat pictured? Next, write down one solution that could assist in the reduction, this means lowering, of the CO2 and explain how this would remove the added carbon dioxide. So there are 3 parts to this question. What activity pictured here is going to increase the amount of carbon dioxide? What can we then do to reduce the amount of carbon dioxide, and explain how your solution is going to actually reduce it? Okay? If you need help, what I want you to do is take a look at our rubric or criteria for success. In order for you to get all 5 points, you need to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These 5 components. If you do not, you can see what score you will receive at each of these levels. Right now, exit ticket, silent, and solo. It should take you about 6 minutes to complete. As soon as you're done, give your teacher a thumbs up. Excellent job, excellent focus. You did an incredible job, except for folks like, Ranjay and them. Everyone else, you did great. I'm sure you got an A. Have a great day today, guys. Make sure you're still working hard to earn your respect letters. show respect, and have a positive reaction. I'm talking to you, JoJo. Bye-bye.